tenor saxophones play your part. He looked right at me. You play your part. I play it. No, play it now. Of course, I couldn't play. He said, "Come with me." Kicked me out of band, and says, "And you can't even join beginning band unless you take private lessons." So that was the start of my everything. Right there.
That is Vincent Herring, one of my absolute favorite saxophonists, and he was kind enough to invite me into his home for this very candid interview where he tells us great stories about his time touring with legends of jazz music. He gives us a sneak preview lesson from his upcoming book on bebop language and shares tons of valuable insights about saxophone playing from sound to rhythm to gear. Please enjoy my conversation with the great Vincent Herring.
Yeah, and you know what? So we were in Japan. I was with you guys, and part of my mission there was to do an interview with you. We didn't have time. And we got to hang, but we were just we were having too much fun, and the interview never happened.
You know, one thing I do want to say beforehand.
Sure.
You know, even though I'm a D'Addario artist, Rico reads, your reads are very good.
Okay, I brought you some more.
Thank you.
I'm glad you said that, and feel free to, I'm happy to give you more if you want to have your students try them.
Yeah, well, you know, like I say, I'm a D'Addario artist, and the spectrum pretty much fits. In fact, they're new. They have some reads they call organic now, right? And I was like, oh, what is this? And I tried to box. I was like shocked. In fact, I told Eric last night, he was playing one of your reads also on the gig. And I said, man, have you tried the new Jazz Select organics? He says, man. I said, no, they're like different, a little bit different, and they're better. And I actually think we're living in a golden age of reed manufacturing. Kids might not realize this, but in the late 70s when I started playing, reeds were so good, man. And of course I couldn't really play, but you know, I remember ordering Lavaz, and it came in a black and green box, and when it would come, like every reed just sounded so good. And I confirmed this with some of my friends, you know, and they said the same thing. And at that time, Lavaz was like the jazz reed. Like, you know, Coltrane used it, Cannonball used it, everybody used that reed, right? Lavaz medium, that was like a standard thing. So I happened to get into that because I read somewhere that, you know, Cannonball used that, Phil Woods used that, so well, we use that starting point. And so 7 to 10 reeds out of that box were good, right? Then somewhere in the 80s, reeds just got awful. And then the 2 to 3 in a box, it reversed somehow. And it was like that for years. And it wasn't until recently, I don't know, maybe the teens, you know, 2000 in the teens, that it changed. And now, to me, I'm convinced thoroughly we're in a golden age of reeds. And the little bit I tried yours, each one coming out of the box was good. Yeah. You know, I didn't run into bad ones. So that's the same kind of thing. And the reeds that I do use from D'Addario, so good, man. I used to be a Van Doren artist. So good. Yeah. They're just so good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they were doing back in the 70s and why they would have been so good then, but I mean, today with the technology, there's a lot of ways to ensure that they're better.
Well, here's what I was told had happened. Okay, that the process, I guess they cut the cane and then they store the reeds in an open barn, right, for a period of time. How
well, it's a dark closed. I mean, it's closed just to keep it dry.
And how long is that?
A year.
A year.
Yeah.
So at some point they figured, well, why don't we try to cut down that storage thing? And by all measured tests that they could use, it was the same property, same density.
Right.
So what's the problem? It wasn't the same.
Right.
But you know, everything you can use to measure it, with the exception of the musicians, it came up the same. But all of us were like, what happened?
Yeah.
You know, and it was terrible and just awful. And so, you know, I get my reeds for free, but until recently, I was still using the reeds I had in Japan. That they just lasted me that long. Literally, I had three, they're called Grand Concert Select. I had three in rotation, and it was like 2 nights ago that I threw them out.
Right.
So that's,
But they should, yeah, and they should be stored for a good year. And then, you know, I know some people ask to get, like some artists say, oh, I want reeds, but I want the ones that are stored for 3 years or something, you know, before they get, you know. So I know there's people that put in special requests for the really older ones.
but anyway, your listeners should know that stop complaining about reeds. reeds right now are good.
Yeah.
They really are. And I lived through that dead period. In fact, I had heard an interview with Frank Strozier, and you know, I was like always interested in hearing Frank Strozier. For some of your listeners, I know they don't know who Frank Strozier is. Frank Strozier is an amazing saxophone player. He was part of that clan from Memphis with George Coleman, and that came up, and he played with Woody Shaw. Did some stuff on his own. In fact, Cannonball Adderley was producing records, and one of the records he produced was introducing Frank Strozier. And Frank's a great player, but he stopped playing for some reason. And so I was listening to an interview with him on the radio, and he said, well, you know, all these accomplishments, why would you stop playing? He said, reeds got so bad, I just couldn't take it. I don't know if that's the real reason, but that's what he said on the interview. I was like, man,
So earlier, so when we were having lunch, you were talking about how sometimes you have sessions around here, and you have some of your better students playing, and you're telling me stories about how a big part of you developing your sound was being with Phil Woods. Maybe you could talk about that.
Sure. Okay, so goes back to Hal Stein, you know, my lesson with Hal Stein in Oakland, California. Now, when I first started off, I started playing with, studying with a guy named David Peterson. And David Peterson was a Broadway show player in the San Francisco Bay Area. And his dad was also a Broadway player. So he played saxophone, flute, clarinet, oboe, English horn, you know, but really well. Most importantly, he learned how to breathe and do everything correct. So me as a little kid come to him for lessons, right away we learned how, you know, because I find that when I get students now, because they're all college age, they are all, you know, fairly advanced, or at least from being a beginner. So I'm not introducing them to breathing, but I do people that ask me about sound, and I run through all the components that go into making your sound. And one of the things is breathing. And everyone, when we start, breathe through the diaphragm. And nobody knows what the hell the diaphragm is. So I was lucky I started with David Peterson, and I got breathing stuff right, so it's natural for me. So now when I breathe, if I would breathe in the chest, it feels abnormal because I'm always breathing the diaphragm, right? So anyway, I had good technique coming into it. You know, I was playing on the streets in New York, using a super heavy reed, trying to, you know, play loud and all this stuff. And then I went to my first lesson with Phil Woods, and he listened to me play. Said, what the hell are you playing? I said, well, I know 4.5. He said, Jesus Christ. And he said, play my horn. I played this horn. I could barely play it. I was like stopped up because the reed was so soft. And he's like, man, you got to reduce your reed strength. And Phil played. And so hearing him playing in his living room very much like this, you know, you heard this beautiful sound, and he wasn't working very hard, and he had a lot of presence in his sound and just so many colors in it. So hearing that naturally, you know, made such an impression on me. You know, before that, it was my impression was David Peterson, who's also very good, and also Hal Stein was another alto player that I studied with in the Bay Area. Also very good sound. But it was something about Phil's sound, especially coming off that period where he did the Billy Joel solo. He doesn't like to hear about that. But the Billy Joel solo, it was one of the things most striking about that solo was just his sound was just so beautiful. And I was like, wow, who is this guy? And then I heard the little flat five. Oh my goodness, that's too much. He's a jazz player, And so I really was fascinated about sound. So when I first was sitting in his living room, hearing him play was really eye-opening. So I had a concept of sound. Hearing things on the record is different. Now, I heard Phil live several times in San Francisco. I used to go hear his group every time they would come to town. And it's different hearing him on the bandstand than it is just raw in the living room. Pick up, play exactly the exercise we're doing. It's different. And see how little he was working, the amount of projection he would get, the dynamic range. You don't even think about these things, but he is here and he's here and he's here. It's just doing it naturally, being expressive. And I said, wow, you get all this. So first lesson, reduce reed strength. And I was trying to go from a 4.5, I think I was playing Rico Royal, or one of them, 4.5s. And then I had to reduce it. First I went to a 2, which was extreme. I really couldn't get that happening. And then I later went to a 3. And then that felt right for quite a while. What am I playing now? A size 2.
A size 2, really? Okay.
Size 2. How big is my mouthpiece? Not big at all. And people are surprised at this when they hear my sound in person. But that's all it is. I'm not working. Not at all. Not working hard at all. So you hear people say this, but I'm telling you, this is what it is. So I'm playing a size 2 reed, and my mouthpiece is the equivalent of a 5 or 6. Sounds crazy. Get much more sound out of that than large mouthpiece, medium reed. I'm just telling you. So that works for me. And that's it. And when I worked with Nat Adderley, one time in a sound check, we were playing, and he said, man, you're too damn loud. I said, well, it was like Cannibal. He said, way louder than Cannibal. I was like, really? And I said, wow. I was thinking completely of what it sounded like from listening to records, and that's our perspective. And then I had a situation happen where, of course, I heard Joe Henderson live all the time. I never played with him, but I heard him live on many occasions. Heard him in a sound check, just heard him warming up, heard him practicing, or just practicing in the dressing room, but it never, So Joe Henderson was super soft, did not play loud at all. I mean, if he waved away from the mic, it was inaudible. But when you hear it on the record, it sounds big, robust, and it sounds like you get a different perspective of what the sound was like. But I know what it sounds like. And so there was a couple young musicians that were trying to emulate this thing, and one of them in particular, I don't recall his name at the moment, super loud. And I was like, hey man, Joe was soft. What are you talking about? But his perspective was that. And that's why Joe ripped all over the horn, up and down. It wasn't working at all, man. He was taking it easy. And so, like I say, it's people's reference point is the recordings, because you can't hear them live. And so it's a little different. So for me, I purely go for quality of sound, purely. A nice, volume of quality, and dynamic range, but that's all I'm going for quality of sound. And it just happens to have a lot of presence, because my perspective of sound from someone that I admired was Phil Woods in his living room playing saxophone, sound great, even though most of the time he played piano.
So that, because I've seen you live many times, and you talk about being on the microphone, a lot of times you're not even near the microphone, and we're hearing you loud and clear all throughout the room. So I mean, there's a lot of power and a lot of projection in that sound. And so now we know it's a number 2 reed, not a really open mouthpiece. And you're saying you're not really working especially hard. It's coming from somewhere else.
No. not at all. And that's coming from the diaphragm for real. And in fact, I end up sometimes storing air that I don't use, and then it comes out slowly. Or I don't really circular breathe, but you know, it would be the same technique where you store air, and you know, you store air here, and then this air is forced out when you breathe in. That's circular breathing. So sometimes I store air just because the colors I'm playing in my sound don't call for that at the time. You know, it's just automatic stuff. It's not even thought process. It's just all automatic. But
Well, hearing all that, I'm sure people that listen to you, or a lot of them, are, including myself, are like surprised, like, wow. So it's not about forcing and working really hard.
no, that's a different kind of way of playing, and some people like the physical challenge in it, and they need that. But no, it's not. It's very small setup.
Okay, well, that's good. That's like a bit of a revelation. Another thing I would really like to ask you about, now that I have you here, is language. And you know, because I've listened to like all your recordings, and I listen to you, and I try to, you know, steal some of your language. But I know, you know, I get the impression that you have kind of developed this language through different, you know, sources, different, you know, sources of inspiration. So maybe you could kind of talk about your approach to developing language.
Okay. Well, as you know, I have a book coming out, and we had talked about doing some things with you on your side. So I want to do that, and it's not just, you know, language that I use. For instance, it's multiple systems of language, because you know, you're playing music that's so diverse and so different. You're not just playing bebop tunes. You're not just playing jazz standards. You know, but you're running through different things that call for different systems of approach. So there's it's multifaceted. You know, I have different things. So, like for instance, from a bebop perspective, you know, it's like a bad word bebop scales. You know, it's a bad word, and so I definitely have a system that I like to teach. Now, what's interesting is I've found over the years is I'll hear a student play and I'll think to myself, you really need to get this together. And they don't really want to. They're respectful, so they don't say that they don't want to, but they'll come in week after week, and I say, okay, man, you get this, and they still don't have it. And I know what it is, because they think it's old fashioned, they think it's not the language of today, and they don't want to do it. And I'm like, it was interesting. There's a Wayne Shorter documentary in play now.
I've watched it, yeah.
Three parts, and I watched it also, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I'm an admirer of Wayne Shorter, but one thing that he said that I didn't like, and I thought about it a lot. In fact, I talked to Mike LaDon about it, and he said, you know what, that same thing caught my attention also, and that was, he was teaching at, I guess it was the Herbie Hancock Institute in California. And he was listening to some players, and their approach to something. He says, no, we're looking for innovators, right? And I thought to myself, you know, when you trace how everyone became, you know, there's very few innovators in our music, but those who are acknowledged innovators, when you trace how they became innovators, they came through the core of the music, and they developed innovation. They didn't like, don't play that. Don't do through bebop. No. I'm sorry, man, but when you listen to John Coltrane, early John Coltrane, it's straight up Dexter Gordon ripoff. Wish he could play as good as Sonny Stitt. I mean, that's what it was. And he grew from there. Admired Charlie Parker to death, and he grew from there, right? When you listen to Bud Powell, man, if you listen to early not Bud Powell, if you listen to early McCoy Tyner, straight up Bud Powell, and McCoy Tyner he's not credited or often thought of as an innovator, but for me, McCoy Tyner is just, his language is amazing, just so amazing. So that one little thing I disagreed with strongly, and I feel like I understand the concept of you guys are trying to develop innovators, but to me, that's not how it's. And of course, I'm not there, so who am I to say? But no, I just, I just don't think that that's the way you develop innovative thinkers and innovative improvisers. I think you come through the history of the music. There is correct notes and bad notes. Even though, as you become an innovator, there's a whole nother set of abstract things that come into play. And so my book is called Logic and Critical Thinking in Jazz Improvisation. And part of that, the way that title ended up coming is, I'd read somewhere people say, there's no bad notes. Hell yeah, there are bad notes. There's bad language in jazz, People don't tell people they can play anything. Based on the rules of nature from what we listen to, yes, those rules can be expanded. At one time, that was a bad note, the Diablo note, but and things, of course, we expand, and through innovation, people come up and expand those boundaries. But man, there's just certain core things that, in my opinion, you need to go through and let your innovation come from as you progress. And I always tell my students, I want you to play saxophone the way you want to hear saxophone play. So, I don't have the best sound. Charlie Parker doesn't have it. Cannonball Adderley doesn't have it. Phil Woods doesn't have it. No. You have to decide what's your best, what sounds best to you. And that's going to come through what you're listening to, what influences you, and how you hear and want to hear those things. And so, I used to have a student that sounded like Dave Sanborn, right? And he said to me one day, he says, you don't like my sound? It's like, it doesn't matter if I like your sound. From my perspective, I want you to play in tune. I want you to be able to control it. If you can do those two things, doesn't matter whether I like it or not. I love it if you can do those two things. And don't worry about if anyone loves it. You want to be inspired by your sound. You want your sound to give you energy. You want your sound to make you want to take your horn out and practice. That's, those things are important. And so when it comes to sound production and what is a good sound, that's what I look at. You can control it, play it in tune. If you like it, it's great.
That's great.
So I have my core way I would like for students to do this, and the ones that have gone this route or had it together become incredible players, man. And I've had some really good players, study with me over the years.
Why don't we maybe just do a little demo of just a little quick overview of some of the things?
So that was a song called How High the Moon. So right there in this song, I'm using um, uh, so from the 1, from the 3, from the 5, and from the 7 bebop combinations. Everything is built around the 5, right? So it's built around. So here's the key of F concert or D major for us. Right? So then you're going to have everything is off the 5th. A lot of people learn that. Now they also learn ascending. I just don't like it, so it's just a personal choice where I don't really use that. So I would go on the upbeat 3, 4. So come to the 1 gets you to the 5. The 3 gets you to the 5. The 7. So there's 1, 3, 5, and 7 combinations. So then when I'm playing a song, so it's just those combinations are going around. And so, that's this whole kind of system is built around that. All right. And so it's the kind of thing where I see it in other books and I've never seen it explained well, and so just over the years of not being able to play well and trying to get stuff together, and then I formed some opinions, So I learned, major and minor. A lot of that came from Phil Woods. The first thing we did in lessons with Phil, I'm thinking, man, he's gonna show me some hot lines and some good stuff I can use right away. And first thing he says, all right, let me hear you play thirds through the sevenths on the tune. What do you mean? Na, 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 na. Man, why is he holding the good stuff back from me? And it's funny, as I still find myself using voice leading like that today. In fact, trying to have more varied vocabulary, I find thirds and sevens are just so prevalent, in my playing. So it's very, very, very prevalent, even still in my playing today. That's not a bad thing. I'm just saying that I can hear it so much. I'll be driving and I hear something I recorded on the radio come. And jeez, but they're good notes. Hey, listen, and good notes are a good thing because like one of the first gigs I had, man, I could not play. Working with Horace Silver, I couldn't play. Horace heard me play a blues. Like I could play a blues, and he said, "Man, you sound good, man." And I said, "Man, if you play tenor," I said, "I am a tenor player." He said, "What? Here, give me your number." And so, but I wasn't ready. Oh man, I wish. Why couldn't that gig happen years later? So, and at some point, like 20 years after the gig happened, somebody started posting a little bit online, but they would only post Dave Douglas solos. Dave Douglas was a trumpet player. And I was like, thank you, God. Thank you. So there'd be all this stuff. I'd be there playing the melody, and then they'd post Dave's solo, and then it cut out. I was like, oh, this is great. Somewhere like a few years later, he started posting, terrible. So, you live and learn, man, which is one of the reasons why it's so amazing to me that all of these kids post everything. I'll see, some kid post what he thinks is a lesson for people. I'm like, Jesus Christ, man. Terrible ideas on language. Just awful. They learn one little thing and then they're like trying to show the world. I had breakfast today. It's a bit much. Spend your time practicing and just learning in general is much better. Much better uses of your time. And but I will say one thing today. In general, students are more proficient than they were when I was coming up. Like when I entered college, let's say I was 1 in 100 that stood out, like really, really good potential. And now, instead of a 1 out of 100, you'll have 20 that are even better than I was going into school. I'm like, wow. Sometimes I get students in school, I'm like shocked at how good they are. And but those tend to be the students with a really open mind. And the only thing I can figure out about that is maybe it's because literally everything is available to them. I asked Jamie Emersall this question. I said, Jamie, all the teaching aids that are out there and you did this and this, how come we, meaning society, hasn't produced another Freddie Hubbard or McCoy Tyner or Charlie Parker? How come? Students are better. Right now, they're better coming into school or even not going to school. Kenny Garrett didn't go to school, doesn't matter. He's an amazing player, right? So how come we haven't produced that person? And Jamie was like, that's a good question. And so it's interesting. I don't claim to have the answer either. I don't know. So a few elements could be involved. One is certainly at the time. First of all, there's fewer distractions back then.
Yeah.
So, what are you gonna do? Watch one of 3 channels, or practice? Right. Now you got like what do I have 1,000 channels on TV
and
like
Netflix and all the history of movies and everything.
Oh, yes, pretty incredible. Even that is even better, man. I mean, it's like literally. I remember as a kid, my mom would say, "Don't watch that terrible stuff on TV," and I was like, "Yeah, she's pretty much right." But now there's like great things on TV, and in my particular case, I have 2 kids, and both of them became Ivy League graduates, and I can tell you right now, first thing we did not own a television, and for the first 10, 12 years of my son's life, he was like, "Dad, can we get a TV?" I was like, no, we're cool. He's like, really? So he'd go over a friend's house occasionally. He'd like, man. So then we got one around 10 or 12. And then it was like a family activity. We would watch a sporting event or some new movie we heard about. When it came on, we'd watch, and so then it became, so it was very little, and I knew that if we had it, in my particular case, I wouldn't have been strong enough not to watch it. And I realized that when I was growing up, my mom watched a lot of TV, and I, as a result, watched a lot of TV. And so, in order for my kids to really develop, cut the electronics out, and stimulate them with, I saw the other day a woman pushing a toddler in a stroller in the park. Right? What was the kid doing? He's sitting there with her phone, whack, whack. I'm like, you can't say anything, but you want to say it's the worst possible thing you do. Let him be stimulated by that squirrel running up the tree. That's beautiful. Not only is it beautiful, but it's like super interesting. It's fascinating. Just the beautiful colors of that bird over there, or the deepness of that green. It's like, it's for intelligence tests when they test them, for these private schools. One of the things that they do, sit the kids in a room because they're so young. What can they do, right? They sit them in a room, and so one, they want to see how they interact with other kids. And in my son's case, he was like so into books, couldn't read. He was a little guy, but he just like fascinated with every picture, and he remembers some of the books when I read it to him. So he's like going through it slowly. And I know what he's doing. He's thinking, man, he just remembered, he's just looking at everything. So they like that. Then he goes in and they read you a story. And when they read you that story, they want to see how much you retain and how much you understood and what you know about the characters and the plot. And this is what they ask. So if you're ever, if you have young kids and you're ever up for one of these elite private schools, and you can teach them all the addition and subtraction, everything else you want, doesn't matter. That's not what they're looking for. And so, he thrived in that and did well. And even today, he's still the same person that he was. And he owns a television. And what does he watch? Yeah, sporting events sometimes. Watch very little TV. And my daughter, the same thing. They're just not. They didn't grow up with that, so they have a different perspective. So with jazz education today versus yesterday, I used to also have these discussions with Nat Adderley as well. And Nat liked to argue about everything. Like he would say, are you for affirmative action? And I'd be like, no. And he said, you big dummy. And no matter what I would say, he would say that because he just wanted to argue.
He's a debater.
It took me years to figure that out until his son said, man, haven't you figured that out? Whatever, no matter what you say, he's going to take the opposite position and just argue with you because he wants to argue. It's like, Jesus, man, So, but I learned a lot from that, and so we had heavy discussions on jazz education, how he and Cannonball learned how to play versus how guys are learning how to play now, right? And he said jazz was forbidden to be played in school. And he said his father wasn't too tough on them playing, jazz stuff. Practice what you're supposed to practice in at home. He said it was interesting. His father was a trumpet player, but not a professional musician. But he played and loved the trumpet and loved Louis Armstrong and stuff like this. So Cannonball Adderley's first instrument was trumpet. And Nat said, Nat was 3 years younger than Cannonball. And Nat said Cannon was teaching him how to play trumpet on the side. And then once he got pretty good, he told his dad he didn't want to play trumpet, he wanted to play saxophone. But Nat plays trumpet, So, that's the story that Nat told me. So in any event, Cannon got a clarinet and learned how to play clarinet. Yes, Cannonball was a clarinet player. And I got a great Sonny Stitt story. Cannonball was a clarinet player and then played saxophone. And of course we know he grew into a great saxophone player. But the way they learned how to play jazz, Nat said there was a guy in their area named Oscar Denard who was a piano player. And Oscar Denard is a legendary piano player. In fact, Blue Note Records found some tapes of Oscar Denard and put it out. Probably, I'm guessing, Michael Cascuna or someone who just really a historian who knew who he was and his importance. He died very early on, I believe, on a State Department tour in like Africa or something. He died. But he was like a guru to them, and they would work on music. So if they wanted to learn a song like Stella by Starlight, of course there are no fake books or anything like that, and you have limited LPs, so how did you do it? And that's it. There was a thing called the Hit Parade that was printed in the paper. So this would be, they would list all the songs that are going to be played in the newspaper. So you see NBC Orchestra with Doris Day doing Stella by Starlight, and then maybe at 10:02 was Bing Crosby singing Stella by Starlight, and you see it and several times, so they can go through all in different keys.
So wait, they had to wait for the time and hear
Well,
it
yeah,
like once.
Yeah. Like I pointed out to him that they play. So Cannonball played a wrong note on. So he said, "Man, you know how we learn that song?" I said, "Well," he said, "We went to the club that night and heard Monk, and the next day we played it in practice." And I know, it's like it's such a different level, man.
Yeah.
And but also, Nat had incredible ears, and Nat told me Cannonball was incredible. He said a couple things that I asked him over and over, and he used to swear by. He said, "Cannonball didn't practice that much." "Oh, come on, Nat. What do you mean by that? What's not much?" He said, 2-3 hours a day. I said, "Come on, man. Really?" He said, "That's it, man. That was it." I said, "Come on, there's no way he plays like that." He said, "I'm telling you, that's all he did." He said he had freakish attributes, like any song he ever heard, he could play it in any key, retain it, so he wasn't working on stuff that everybody else was working on. Learning Stella by Starlight, he just heard it once, play it.
Right.
Some people, and I've had students like that. Everybody else was like, "Oh, yeah, it's the 2/5, and then it goes to the relative minor." I get none of that, none of that. So that wasn't a thing. And Nat said the only time Cannonball really practiced, he said, was the summer he came back from New York after hearing Coltrane. So Coltrane kind of scared him, and he practiced. So Nat said he actually practiced because he was going to be joining Miles Davis's group. And he said Coltrane was rough. So that got him practicing a little bit. But he said before that, when they were growing up, they didn't practice much. And that's when I used to ask him every few weeks, "Are you sure?" "I'm telling you." So he stood by that. He said, in fact, years later, he just kind of could play everything he could play on alto, he pretty much play on trumpet. He just had no endurance. And so sometimes he said there's a recording session called Domination, and it's with a large big band. I think Oliver Nelson scored it. And he said, got this all-star trumpet section. So Cannonball walk by, pick up somebody's trumpet and start playing. Oh my God, fuck! And I couldn't believe that he had the same kind of vocabulary on the trumpet. He couldn't play long, but just picking it up, no problem. So so Nat was in awe of him from that perspective. And I was in awe of Nat for his ears. And so one time we were doing a clinic at Florida A&M. And one thing that he said was, "And y'all should learn how to play all the songs in all the keys," right? I've been hearing this forever. People always said, I guess they're talking licks, lines, patterns, and kids say, "Well, that's a little difficult. Can you demonstrate? Can you play Donna Lee and in some weird key, right?" And Nat reached over to me and said, "Well, what, start on major 7? "Yes, sir." And whatever key it was, he played the melody. I'm sitting there calculating how to play a solo on it. And he's like waving for me to play. And so when it was over, he said, why don't you play the melody with me? I was like, are you kidding me? He said, I sat there just explaining to these kids and this and that. And you know, and I started, I mean, this is really eye-opening to me, you know. And I thought, I said, how many people can do that now today? Maybe, I'm guessing, maybe Nicholas Payton. Nicholas Payton, pretty amazing musician. Maybe Chris McBride, maybe. But I don't, you know, and it's probably some kid walking around, barely practicing, probably playing any key. And you know, people have those kind of, we consider them musical gifts, but just people are just built different. My son had some super abstract high mathematics class at Dartmouth. And so his first grading period comes. He gets 4 A's and a C plus. I'm like, James, what? He said, hey, man. He said, man, I'm sitting in class with all the kids are like Connor. Connor was a kid that he went to, Connor was below him in grades. And, but what's the square root of 9,642? There's the answer. What is 7,965 divided by 7? There's the answer. He said, I'm sitting in class and they're all like Connor. He said, you can use a calculator. I'm the only one using one. He said, I got a citation in that class. I said, what the hell is that? He said, no, it's a good thing. So actually on his resume, it says, you know, citation in whatever this level mathematics was, you know, from Dartmouth. He said, you know, people don't know he got a C plus, but he said he's more proud of that C plus than any grade he ever got there, because it's like, it was super hard. I said, well, you're gifted in mathematics. He said, no, these kids are all Connors. I'm like, wow. And so they're just humans. We don't often see the subtle variations, but man, there are people. Well, a simple thing. Some people have perfect pitch. You know, not that they're special, and they might not be a good musician at all, but they have perfect pitch. Why does he or she have perfect pitch and I don't? As much time as I spend playing music, you know. But some people have it, some people don't, and it's other things that they also have. You know, retention from memory, for details. You know, some people just have these different things, and it doesn't mean they're going to be a better musician. Like if you talk to Benny Golson, who grew up with John Coltrane, one of the things that Benny used to say to him is, man, I never in a million years thought that he would be this iconic saxophone player. So we were like admirers of Charlie Parker and Earl Bostic and other guys, you know. And, you know, there was nothing special about him, no perfect pitch, no, you know, this, no that. How did he become this and become that? And that's what I say. So when you just take a statement like Wayne Shorter's, like, we're looking for innovators, we're trying to create innovators. I don't know, but I don't think that can be done, you know. And I don't think it could be done. I think, you know, through enlightenment and education and being awareness, those thinkers are gonna, you know, do things differently. And but I don't think you can just force innovation. There's been, like I say, very few innovators in our music, and the music, you know, the innovations in the music, it's not really, you know, the music's young. The music is 110 years old or whatever. Yeah, not a lot of innovation has happened in the music, obviously some, but most of that you can trace back in classical music and look at the progression of innovation in classical music. Look at the modal period. Look at the Bach, it's kind of bebop period. You can see all that, the harmonic sophistication and changes in that music and leading up. You know, so jazz is still young, and I think the next. Well, first of all, the new innovation that has taken place is in meter. And that's taken place, not necessarily something that I like, I certainly appreciate and respect it, but kids being able to feel and feel complex compound meters. And I had a student who, super talented student, just playing conventional, right? But he was really into like really some abstract thinking, right? And I told him, yeah, bring one of your songs in, I want to play it. What? It's like, 7, 8 to like 15 to 2, and then I said, Jesus Christ. Now here's the thing. You can practice and get through it. He felt it. It's like the aggression I have in 4/4, being able to play across the bar line, drag the beat for effect. He could do that with all the compound. Jesus Christ. And so that's where the latest innovation is taking place.
I wonder, do you think that comes from, is that somewhat cultural? Because there are cultures that have that in their folk music, more than others.
I don't think so. And the reason I say that is because it's not coming only from those people. It's, the average white dude from Minneapolis is doing that. Even, just subtle, complex rhythms across 4/4 superimposed. That's practiced, is studied. Like I've been meaning to get to that practice. Basically practicing patterns of 4 and 5 and 6 across 4. I'm saying 5 and 6 and 7. And working it out in 4-bar blocks. So you're creating these lines with this against the time, and then it mathematically ends up. Yeah, in theory, I know what to do. I've heard Danny Grissett, is a piano player in Europe. He occasionally does it. Dave Kokoski does it a little bit. Joey Calderazzo is another piano player. He does it. But horn players, maybe occasionally, not much. Michael Brecker used to do it, but the progression of the music. So that's where I see the latest innovation. Some of the people doing what the press, some press is calling innovative, I don't hear it. And who knows, would I have heard it even with, like when you hear Louis Armstrong's first comments on bebop were very negative. They're ruining music. Who wants to hear that? This is not danceable. He had a very different perspective, so he couldn't hear it. So then later his next comments were more positive, but I also think that was more socially pushed on him. That's my guess. I have no idea. But because for him to do an about face the way he did, that's what it makes me think. And I just don't. Like again, if he couldn't see it, maybe I'm not seeing it also. Right. But I doubt it. But I'm sure he doubted it also. He didn't think bebop was innovative, or he just thought it was just unnecessarily technical, and who the hell's hearing this, and what is this? So again, it was negative. But maybe he really did come around. So some of the criticism of things I have is like, it's just nothing but technical. So I do have some of those same criticisms, but except for I try to analyze, why do I feel that way? Why is this not musical to me? and then why does this just sound just so technical unnecessarily? And maybe Louis Armstrong felt the same thing when he heard Bird and Diz. So maybe I'm one of them old guys that just can't hear but no, I am a firm believer in innovation coming through the strength of knowledge and embracing and digesting the history of this music, because there's been some incredible things to come before you. And so innovation that comes out of that is going to be great. Like when you listen to, knowing that what Coltrane coming from, listen to those early Coltranes and to hear him, go through, like when he was with Miles Davis, is that innovative? No, it's just a great saxophone player. He's just playing better than everybody else, but it wasn't innovative, but once he got to the modal period, then that's a different approach, a different change in the language, and he brought a couple people along with him, and some of those people that he brought along with him, they didn't have the depth or the knowledge that he had. And case in point is when he recorded Love Supreme, he recorded it twice. The first time they did it, if you read the original liner notes, apologies to Archie Shepp and Pharoah Sanders, because apparently when they first recorded it, they recorded it with 3 tenors, and it was Bob Thiel was like, nah, that shit ain't happening, redo it, and they did it into this incredible masterpiece of a recording, and that's why the apologies are on that record, because it didn't work, and if you look at both Archie Shepp and Pharoah Sanders, no disrespect to anybody, I never mean that, but both of them could not play, in my opinion, could not play in terms of being able to play through chord changes until later in their life. So they started playing with Train, they had the emotions and they had the emotional drive and maybe some other things, but it didn't have the depth of Coltrane. It's like when you hear Coltrane on, Transitions, for instance, man, there's just a certain depth to him, and that's because his growth and innovation came out of something. It wasn't just like, I'm going to innovate and do this, I heard a bunch of avant-garde players in New York, and in fact, I played with some avant-garde groups because I wasn't, didn't have harmony together. I couldn't do this, couldn't do that, and they just, but I could play the saxophone, and that's kind of where I settled into doing some of those groups. And one was David Murray Octet and Big Band, and so I heard quite some players. He's played with a guy named Beaver Harris and his 360-degree music experience, and so I heard some of these things, and I realized just they don't have the substantive background that I was looking to develop. And so would they be different players? Very much so. So I'm still a firm believer that the next innovator is going to be a person who's digested the earlier stuff well. And I don't mean, what Phil talks about, I asked Phil how he learned how to play. And one of the things that he said was he studied with Lenny Tristano. And I said, well, what did you do with Lenny? So he had us go back to the very beginning and learn like a Dixieland, so what we call Dixieland now, these early swing solos, where the style is like really arpeggiated through the chord structures, and it's really heavily melodic on improvisation around the melody. These are these things, and so he did that, and he said, I said, did it help? He said, yeah, I guess it helped, But, he wasn't dying to do it, but he also lived in a different time. He grew up in a different era, so it was much more digestible to him. There's a couple interviews where Coltrane saying, one day I want to go back to do this, but that's not where his beginning is really with those main influence, Charlie Parker, Dexter Gordon. That was his real core beginnings, where he's developed. Earl Bostic, where those guys developed out of, and then they grew. So they grew through knowledge. He thoroughly learned how to play chord changes and make them, speak in a certain kind of way, and he grew through that. And that's where the innovation. To listen to McCoy, playing like Bud Powell, and some of his other contemporaries, and then to just morph into this whole nother vocabulary. It's incredible. And so McCoy is one of my favorite, man. Just his vocabulary and approach to the music is just so amazing. And I wish younger people could have heard McCoy when he was really on his game. Not towards the end of his life. I was happy that he was still around and be able to play, but when he was like unbelievable. I did one gig with McCoy, and I'm sitting right in the curve of the piano, and he had a big band, and I was hanging with John Stubblefield, saxophone player, and so Stubbs like, hey man, I want you to sub McCoy with me. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, okay, all right, great. So I went by to hear the band I heard before, and so I was going to be playing tenor, right? And so I'm sitting there, and McCoy had been given such a big build-up about me. He's like, I'm looking forward to hearing you play, right? So I'm thinking, well, I'm a little cocky, So start playing. They're like, man, McCoy's in rare form. It was just so a little tearful. I was like, could not believe how he played, and so McCoy kept telling me to solo because I'm right there, and I look over to one of the other saxophone players. He said, play, and they jump up and play, right? And so this went on all night. So he said to me, I want you to play some saxophone. Same thing happened. I fucking did not take one solo because it was like all I could think about was, man, I have got to study. I've got to practice. Jesus, and I came in there with a cocky attitude, and I couldn't do anything. I just decided, no way am I going to play, because I could recognize how great he was. I had the same thing happen with Michael Brecker. I was so cocky, and Pete Yellen, a good friend of mine, he's like, hey man, I'm going to bring, I was going to Long Island University in Brooklyn. I'm going to bring Michael Brecker to play with you and your ensemble. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Cocky as I am, right? And I'm thinking to myself, man, I know you can play the saxophone, all this pop stuff, right? Mike comes in, nicest guy in the world. Everybody says that. Nicest guy in the world. That's not somebody else telling you. I'm telling you, nicest guy in the world. And Mike starts to play. I pack up my horn and I sit there. And Pete says, hey man, you gonna play? I was like, I could not believe, because I didn't like his records. But there's one record with Jack Wilkins where he's playing What Is This Thing Called Love. Incredible. That's how he played. Just like that. And I was just like, I just could not believe how well he played the saxophone and played jazz. Forget about all the pop stuff. He played that great too. Just fucking unbelievable. So then I would go see him play. He'd be playing some small venues too, man. He wasn't, he was, everybody knew who he was, but he wasn't like a big star. I don't even think he had a record out. And he'd be playing these, there was one club, he used to live near Canal Street, and there was a club down there that he would play at on the other side of Canal Street. And I want to say it was called 55, not 55 Christopher Street that everybody knows, but it was another club down there. He used to play in that club, and it was like size of my living room, and I used to just be like, played saxophone so fucking well, man. I was like, Jesus Christ. Only time I had that experience before he and McCoy was with Freddie Hubbard. First time I went to hear Freddie was at the Keystone Corner in Vallejo, on Vallejo Street in San Francisco. I lived in Vallejo, California. That's why I need to say that. And the Keystone Corner was 750 Vallejo Street, so it was about 25 miles from Vallejo. I went there, and I was primarily going to hear Joe Henderson because some of my friends were studying with Joe, and they're like, "Yeah, you should study with Joe." I said, "Really?" And so I went there to hear him. He was playing with Freddie Hubbard. Freddie Hubbard was like depressing. He was so good. I was like, oh my God, it is not possible for another human being to play that good. It was unbelievable, just unworldly. And so when we listen to players today, all of them are much better proficiency than I was, or many of my peers when we went into school. Much better. But nobody gets to that next level. No one. And you know, I asked Jamie Ingersoll, had him scratching his head. And he can't, because Jamie knows. He heard all those guys. You're Freddie Hubbard. He knows what that is. And I just could not believe that how someone could play. In fact, years later, my friend Stubblefield got the gig with Freddie Hubbard. I was so happy for him. And, you know, he was practicing for it and everything. And the first gig was going to be in New York. Great, I get to go to the first gig. And they were playing at South Street Seaport. I went down, you know, and I knew a couple guys in the band. And so Freddie walks in, everybody's going, "That's Freddie." You know, he's got a double-breasted blue blazer on, a size or too small, and takes his horn out, hit him out like this, kind of playing a little bit, and then he walks into the stage, turns to the drummer, a guy named Carl Allen, says, "Rhythm and name." Carl says, "How fast do you want it?" "Fast as you can play it, motherfucker." What is that? And Carl and starts playing it, and Freddie was just unbelievable. I feel for Stubblefield. He hadn't played one note yet, and it's like there's not a human on the planet that can. It was just so incredible, man. I just could not believe that someone had just a wealth of ideas and so free flowing like that. I remember trying to transcribe some of his solos. Da-da-wee! Give me major 7 on the dominant chord. I'm like, why in the hell does that work?
Yeah.
And it's so wrong, but it sounds so good. Yeah, so Freddie was just one of those guys, you know, that was just like incredible like that. If you heard Michael Brecker at the right time, he was also one of those guys. McCoy Tyner, no question, was one of those guys, you know.
Earlier you said you had a great Sonny Stitt solo.
Well, story.
Story,
And and that's there's a saxophone player named Doug Lawrence. Do you know who Doug Lawrence is? Doug Lawrence is the main soloist in the Basie Orchestra. We used to be in the Army together, in the Army band, and West Point band. And so, you know, Doug and I, we go way back. Great saxophone player. So I said, "Man, did you ever take a lesson with Stitt?" He said, "I sure did." He said, and he told me where it was, you know, some hotel in Chicago. He said, gets off the elevator and he hears this clarinet player just like wailing. And he's like, "Hey, and he knocks on the door. And it's Stitt. He said, "Man, I didn't know you played clarinet." He said, "Everybody played clarinet." But there's no recordings of him playing clarinet. Nothing. But I'm not surprised, because that was a standard stepping stone. If you wanted to play saxophone, you play clarinet. That was just a normal thing at that time.
Yeah.
And that was just normal. I don't know how to describe it, because we've lost that that train of thought, you know, where if you want to play, I don't know any other instrument like that, but clarinet is the thing. If you want to play saxophone, "Dad, I want to play saxophone." "Okay, you're going to start on clarinet." That was a standard thing. And, even when I was in grade school, because I my beginnings were a little different. Basically, I liked the saxophone. I liked the way it looked. I liked the occasional solos I heard and some pop sounds, And so I was in what's called a gifted program in a public school, and I signed up for, going to junior high school. I signed up for advanced band. I had never played an instrument in my life, and my thinking was, well, I'm so smart. It's going to take me a few days to figure this out, but it'd be stupid for me to enroll in beginning band and then, be stuck there and they can't move me until next year to the event. So I'll just sign up for the event.
Save everybody some time.
Save them some time. So first day, so in California at that time, whenever you wanted to play an instrument, you signed up for it, and they had all the instruments. Whatever you need, you sign out and check it out. So I checked out a tenor saxophone, and watched how people put the reed on it, all that stuff, put it on. So, and we had a saxophone session in concert band. There might be like 3 or 4 tenor players, like 4 or 5 alto players, concert band. And so we were playing something, and he says, saxophones, play your part. Tenor saxophones, play your part. He looked right at me. You play your part. I play it. No, play it now. Of course, I couldn't play. He said, come with me. Kicked me out of band and says, and you can't even join beginning band unless you take private lessons. So that was the start of my everything right there. And it was 7th grade, and it was like the day after class in advanced band, I got kicked out.
Wow.
So then my big motivation for practicing was I'll show them. and at that level, a few hours of practice is a lot, because in general, most people are not practicing. So at that time, 2 or 3 hours, man, everybody else is like stopping at 1 hour or half an hour. So yeah, I got better, and of course, by the end of the year, I could actually play and got into advanced band. But that's how I started out, just like that. And my mom was a big jazz fan, so constantly I grew up with the music, not knowing it. But I grew up with the music. I didn't think of it as jazz; it was just music. So later, when some of my friends were getting into jazz, they would say, "Man, gotta hear this Art Blakey record. It's like incredible," and they would start playing up like, I know this. I realized my mom she plays this at home all the time. And she had her favorites, and it was pretty diverse within jazz. She would listen to Ornette. This is New York. She had all these Ornette records. She listened to Coltrane, Eddie Harris. She was big on Eddie Harris. And she also loved Grover Washington, and what else? And then, pop music of the day, more black culture pop music of the day. But then she would do weird stuff like we'd be in a car driving somewhere. She would like make us listen to classical music. I'm like, nobody want to hear that. Get some culture. and she ain't into it herself, but she was trying to create an atmosphere for expanding my mind. Now I realize that at the time I didn't. It was like, what the hell am I listening to this for? So that was that. So I grew up with jazz. And that was the beginning of my musical journey. my motivation for practicing was to show them,
Yeah.
which, wasn't musical. It was just like, I'm gonna show them. And I would do certain things that helped me. I didn't realize it. TV show themes, I would play them. Just whatever I heard, I would learn by ear. And, all of this stuff generated interest in playing for me. And generating interest is important. Like I've seen some teachers stop a student from playing just, stupid, silly stuff that they like. Don't do that, man. It's that enjoyment that they like. Sometimes a kid would much rather play some stupid melody that they heard and then like work on some Chopin, they can do both. But so being able to play when the TV show came on, it's like, man, Vince can really play that thing.
Yeah.
These things, yeah, little silly things like that, or some little pop theme of the day. Then I started hearing real players. You'd be like driving in the car and AM radio would come on, and I really got interested in Phil Woods, hearing him on that Billy Joel solo. And Phil would probably roll his eyes and go, "Geez." But a lot of people were introduced to Phil like that. And for me, what was most striking was his sound, quality of his sound. And what's interesting, as years later, looking and analyzing that solo, he changes nothing about his playing. Absolutely nothing. Plays exactly like he'd be playing any jazz tune. He just plays same sound, basically the same vocabulary. But he had a lot of diverse things that he listened to, and that diversity comes out in what he plays. And interesting, that song is in D major, which is key of B for the alto. So I was doing a clinic at Cornell University, and when they were picking material, the guy says, "Oh, I heard you on your record. You do the Gypsy." Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, he said, "I got that arrangement that Quincy Jones did with Phil Woods." I said, "Sure, no problem." So I get up there. Now, for background, Charlie Parker recorded that song in D flat, and that's none of the keys are hard, but it was D flat, which is B flat for the alto, and it's not a great recording. It's one of those where not thought of as it being one of Charlie Parker's better recording days. So then Sonny Stitt does it with Oscar Peterson in E flat. Rings, and the melody sounds great, and it's just beautiful, right? I like it in that key. Sounds great. So I get up there to Cornell, and they have it in the key of D, right? The key of B for the alto. I'm like, Jesus. But, they took it off, must have been out of tune. So I played the concert, did well. So I went to visit Phil about a month later. So yeah, I was up at Cornell, and we did I did a concert with them. Man, we did that arrangement you did with Quincy Jones on the Gypsy, but they put it in the key of D. And he said, "That's where it was, baby." Yeah, really? He said, "Yeah, that's where it was." I was like, wow. I'm just thinking to myself, Jesus Christ, man. Because he played so great and so melodic, that it's just, one of the things that I pride myself on in trying to do is be able to play in any key and have it sound the same as it would in C as it does in C sharp,
Yeah.
and being able to have that. And it's not possible 100% because there are things that are different in the horn. They just don't sound the same, and there are mechanical differences, but you can get pretty damn close, And, like as an exercise, like playing Cherokee around the keys or something, you get pretty damn close, to where all the keys sound pretty damn good. And but I just pride myself. So it's a feel like that's where it was. I was like, okay, excuse me.
Yeah.
Take my little slice of humble pie and shut up. So also a good experience. He was also great guy, and like before I was saying about Michael Brecker. So one day I called Mike Brecker up and I said, "Hey Mike, man, I'd like to get a lesson from you, man." He says, "What would I teach you? Man, you sound so good." I'm like, "No, Michael, I'm serious." He said, "No, I mean, really, we can get together and share ideas." I'm like thinking to myself, this guy is crazy. And so when he died, when we got word of his passing, me and Seamus Blake, a tenor player, were sitting in my car going to a Mingus small group rehearsal. And we're sitting in my car and we're like, man. And I told Seamus that story. He said, I had the exact same conversation with him. I said, nicest guy in the world, man. Nicest guy in the world. When he started working with McCoy, before he started doing it, he calls me up and he says, man, have you heard McCoy lately? I said, yeah. And he's like, so how do you like this guy and what do you think? And I'm like, Mike, you're gonna sound great. You're gonna love doing it, man. I'm a fan. And I'm looking forward to hearing you guys together. But he was like that, just like, I didn't particularly have a. I mean, he came to a few of my concerts. Just a genuinely nice guy, and the director, my boss at William Patterson University, they got Mike Brecker's archives, and he said there was a tape of you Mike had in his archives of like stuff to check out and work on. It's like, come on, man, and that goes back to those sayings, like you can learn so much from anybody, man, and you can learn from everybody. And he was one of those guys that really took that to heart. What is this guy doing? What is Kenny Garrett doing? What is Seamus Blake doing? He's analyzing everybody's shit, man. And so here we are. And I'll speak for myself. I admired this guy. He's checking you out. For whatever little pittance of stuff you have, he's checking it out. That's amazing. But that also goes to, his just genius on the saxophone. And let me just say, when I say genius, what that means. And just someone that spends an abnormal amount of time and gets abnormal amount of stuff together and ability, it's like, was it innovative? I mean, is it innovative to play 10 times better than everybody else? Not really, but it was just amazing musician, and I think back to when I was working with Horace Silver, and we're riding in the car, and some Sonny Rollins comes on the radio, and Horace turns back and says, Sonny Rollins, greatest tenor saxophone player ever lived. So me and my infinite wisdom, I was like, well, what about Coltrane? Horace turns around. Sonny Rollins, greatest tenor saxophone player ever lived. Now, of course, I'm stupid. I don't know anything. And at that level, it's a matter of opinion. There is no definitive anything. It's like I used to have a student that used to constantly burn Paul Desmond CDs for me. I'm like, look, man, you come to me for lessons. I know what Paul Desmond sounds like. And I respect Paul Desmond. You don't need to burn me CDs. But I know what it is, looking back on it, he felt so passionate about it and he loved this. And so for me, I might be telling him, check out Cannonball Sound of the Colors in this. But he was really feeling and hearing something different and felt as passionate about that as I did about something else. And again, I want you to play saxophone the way you hear it, the way you want it, the way you want to play it, the way you want to hear it. And that doesn't mean everybody's going to sound like Charlie Parker. Everybody's going to sound like Charlie, like me, but that means you want to hone in on what your quality sounds. before Phil died, and I went to his house, he gave me a bunch of stuff. I didn't know he was going to die. I mean, I knew he was super, super sick. You know, he had that emphysema for a long time. And so, you know, he's like, gives me a brick of reeds. Like, I'm like, Phil, you know, I have reading to take the reeds. So I took the reeds, you know. And then he gave me a bunch of CDs that he burned. And one was, there was a record, you know the record Live at the Showboat? So, jazz business. So right after that record, the next record that they recorded would have been called The Seven Deadly Sins. And I knew the record existed, but it never came out. So he gave me that record. I was so happy to have it. And because it was like right after that record. Got a Grammy for Live at the Showboat, and then the company drops him. How nuts is that, man? But that's the jazz business. So anyway, he gave me the Seven Deadly Sins, and then he burned some CDs, some of Benny Carter, and then some of Earl Bostic. I was like, Earl Bostic? I didn't know you were in Earl Bostic. What? How can you not know I'm in Earl Bostic? And I started thinking about it, all the little colored things that he plays. You know, that's Earl Bostic, you know. And then I realized that he was into that more than I thought. And Earl Bostic, you know, for people, you know, people don't really check out some of the earlier masters that they should. And I'm not one of these guys that like, you have to check out everybody. I'm not saying that, but there are legitimate lessons to be learned from some other people. You want to hear somebody play altissimo on the alto saxophone in an incredible way? Listen to Earl Bostic in Orbit Up There. It's unbelievable. You know, you think pop guys are like great today and this amazing Davis. No, you listen to Earl Bostic play that. You know, unbelievable. Unbelievable. And that was in what year? 1940 or 50? It's
Crazy.
It's crazy. And so there are a lot of lessons to be learned from cats like that. And I'm looking forward to sharing with you, for your listeners, some of the lesson plans for building language. And like I say, there are just modern things in language that are very different, you know, and everyone, you have to be able to play a minimum amount of progressions on the piano in order to really be a jazz player, in my opinion. And am I a great piano player? No. Can I play simple little tunes? Yes. Can I play a chord progression I need to work on? Yes. I remember years ago, Kenny Garrett coming to my apartment. This was in the 80s, and he was playing, he could barely play piano. He was playing Have You Met Miss Jones, and I was playing through it, and I played it, and he played through it. And then I heard a YouTube clip of Kenny playing piano recently. Unbelievable right hand. I was like, geez, I couldn't believe it, how good it was. I was like, wow. And Freddie Hubbard used to call me often in the middle of the night because it's like, you know, 2 a.m. in New York is only 11 p.m. in
West
California,
Coast.
right? And he'd be playing piano. Great. I mean, played really great. And I said, what's up, Hub? He'd still be playing piano, never said anything. So when he finished the piece, he said, man, what's going on? And he, you know, he's like, who up there is playing? I said, you asked me that like 2 weeks ago. No, I heard, you know, he asked me about some players and stuff. But great piano player. And you don't have to be a great piano player, but you do have to have functional, a little bit of piano playing to really play this music. And it'll help you a lot more than you think. So that's my one little advice to people, that, you know, I learned these lessons late, you know, but as I started getting them together, I realized how much it was helping me and helped me to be able to hear chord qualities and chord changes and, you know, just hear different things in the chord a different kind of way. So I recommend that to everybody. And I'll go through my 4 major systems of improvisation that are very distinct. And in my particular case, I use them all. I don't like, Tai Chi for this, Kung Fu for that. No, it's like, what did Bruce Lee call his martial arts? I forget, Jit Jin Ju or something, whatever. It's like that. It's like grabs everything and uses. But it is four different distinct improvisational techniques and style, and then I bring them all in together. Like let me give you a little something here that explains this. So we'll take song. So there I had so this would be kind of bebop language. So there's a whole nother modern concept that I'm using all the time, but I also use it in conventional things. So we're going to dissect and get into all of that kinds of stuff that I think your kids will find valuable, Tritones, all this stuff comes into play when you're playing, but it's like four very distinct things, and then I'm putting them all together. So my book is going to be all of that, and then we're going to dissect it and go through each one, lesson plan, something like that.
Tell us about this special saxophone you got.
Okay, this special saxophone. All right. So this is a Yamaha saxophone that was created by a guy named Tomoji. Tomoji is the Yamaha saxophone technician here in New York. And surprisingly, Yamaha spends a lot of money on research and development. Why? They want to be good. They constantly hoping to make something better. And for years, I played Yanagasawa saxophones, which I like, very much like. They're very good. I had no problems with them. I had great experience with them. I was instrumental in going from, in helping them when they went from the 880 to newer models. And my relationship with them deteriorated for a variety of other reasons, but not because I didn't like the horn. So anyway, after Yanagasawa, I started playing Mark VI. I had a vintage 58,000 that I liked a lot. And that 58,000, I played it. I was content, having a great time. I had two of them, in fact. One looked kind of new, but it was a 58,000. And I had one with no lacquer on it. That was a 58,000. There's a recording of me playing with the big band in Germany, one of those radio bands. And there's a clip of me doing, I was at Stolen Moments, and that's that 58,000. Love that horn. It's a great horn. And why I sold that horn? Jeez, I don't know. I didn't need the money. Some dumb reason I sold it. Anyway, so So Yamaha calls me up, or Tomoji calls me up, and he says, I hear you're not playing Yanagisawa anymore. Are you interested in playing the Yamaha horns? I was like, no, I'm fine right here where I'm at. But Tomoji is also the nicest guy in the world. He really is. And he asked me to please just tell him what I thought of their horns. And I came by, tried some, took a few with me, and gave him my honest assessment, what I thought was good, what was not good. And he was like, can we make a horn for you? And I was like, nah, because I know you're not going to pay me, so no, I don't want to do that, But one thing led to another, and because I was shocked when Tomoji said, we're going to make you a new horn. I was like, really? I said, what's wrong with this? And he said, we're making it. I was like, okay, because...
Right. They want it to be the new model. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And so, like I say, this is kind of as gorgeous as this horn is, it's part of the reason all the ornament end up happening on this horn is because, none of them were good enough. And I was just thinking, this is good, this is not, and it wasn't, he made this one. I said, this sounds exactly good. I can play it on a gig. And he was like so happy and so relieved. And then he just started noodling on it. And then I come back in a few weeks. I'm like, wow, it was incredible. What he did. All the engraving. And then other people kind of felt weird, other endorsers. So I know he did somebody else's. And he's just, what a kind soul. He's really about learning and expanding, and he knows the history of the music, and he's a genuine jazz fan. His wife actually used to play alto, and they just love music, and he loves his job as a technician. And man, how indebted am I to Yamaha? During the pandemic, when I needed some work on my horn, he sat right there on my kitchen table and overhauled my horn.
Wow.
I was like, wow. Just unbelievable, And so, to your listeners, so he also, you can take cork or foam that's, a little giving and use this to cork this off the way it is when it's shipped. Makes a big difference. Like my horn's like never leaking, man. Just like always immaculate. Just play low notes, no problem. And I think it's that whole little system of putting those corks in there makes all the difference. Really does. So a little tip to your followers.
Nice. Thank you so much for all of that. It's
All right.
amazing
Thank
stuff.
you. I know I rambled on quite a bit.
Oh man, that's why we're here.